I'm starting to get towards the end of the Debbie Reynolds films. There are a few more that I haven't seen, mostly ones that are really difficult to get hold of. And so as I'm coming towards the end, I have high hopes for the films that I'm going to end on a high. With It Started With a Kiss, I have to say I kind of enjoyed it. There was a bit that didn't make much sense, where it kind of went into a dream sequence, but then it just was not clear whether or not the film went into a dream sequence or if it flashed forward. That bit of editing is some of the worst I've ever seen. That aside, the narrative is pretty great, and I really like the characters. So this was released in 1959, directed by George Marshall, with a screenplay by Charles Lederer, and obviously stars Debbie Reynolds as a character called Maggie. And one day while volunteering at a charity event, she meets Sergeant Joe Fitzpatrick, played by Glenn Ford. He is a little bit of a ladies' man. He's kind of suave, kind of good-looking in a very classic sense, and he has eyes for Maggie. One thing leads to another. He persuades her to go on a date with him, and while on this date, he kisses her off her guard. And in that moment, she has this sense of euphoria, almost, and this is a very powerful kiss, and it kind of moved her in ways she wasn't expecting. And the basic premise is, after that kiss on their first date, what's technically meant to be their only date, it was kind of like a favour, if you like, it then does this kind of transformation into a dream sequence, or maybe it flashes forward. It's never really clear, and it doesn't really spoil my enjoyment of the film. But I kind of, because you can make your own mind up which one you think it is, but I just kind of wish they'd maybe thought a bit more about how they were editing that transition. That aside, let's say it flashes forward or it's a dream sequence. It's basically saying this is the life that they will live together as a married couple, and it all started because of this one very powerful kiss that turned Maggie from not really being interested in him and being only on this date as a favour into falling madly in love with him. It started with this one kiss, hence the title. And the sergeant is serving in the Air Force, and Maggie has to move in with him, and there are all kinds of problems, and she suddenly decides to test their relationship. Not problems with their relationship, but, you know, living on an Air Force base is going to have certain complications, and it's not the life that Maggie is used to living. And there's also a surprise that she has for him, and he maybe gets the wrong end of the stick. As an audience member, we know this. I won't say what the actual surprise is or anything, but we know this. He doesn't. Some hilarious situations ensue, but I wouldn't say it's particularly hilarious. What I do like is I like the acting. The actual narrative is not that interesting for me. I didn't really find the whole army base setting to be that interesting. But the characters I kind of liked. I really liked both Joe Fitzpatrick and Maggie Putnam. I probably liked Joe Fitzpatrick more, actually. I found Maggie Putnam to be a little bit standoffish. But I really liked them, and I think they worked really well together. I enjoyed their chemistry on screen, but I loved their facial reactions. I just loved how often over the top the acting was. Not in terms of ham acting, but in terms of the characters' responses and reactions. I felt like their reactions were over the top, obviously reflected in the acting, and that's what I found funny a lot of the time. There's a shower scene, which is not what you think, or what you might think, and something happens there unexpectedly, and just the reaction and Maggie's face and the way that Joe responds to that, I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed those few minutes. I thought they were great. So I did enjoy the film. There's nothing wrong with the narrative development, aside from the thing that I've previously mentioned. But, you know, the pacing's good. We get from A to B quite well. With the whole us knowing what this surprise Maggie has, but Joe thinking it's one thing, they don't drag that out. Some films would keep that going for pretty much the entire film, but they don't. They get to a point where Joe finds out the truth, and then that helps the narrative develop in different ways. Good mix of supporting characters. Eva Gabor is in this, which is pretty exciting. I enjoyed it. By no means is this my favourite Debbie Reynolds film. Partly because there are some absolutely fabulous films that she's done. Could I name a favourite? Tammy. I think it has to be Tammy. I'm not 100% sure, which is ironically the first of her films I saw. I think it's Tammy. But also just because it's not, it's not fantastic, it's not flawless, but it's good. If you're looking for a rom-com and you like the cast or you like the sound of the narrative, give it Started with a Kiss a go. You could certainly choose worse films.